Good day, friends. I'm Kerry Dillinger. This is Bible Class Topics. You've joined us for a study of the time in Genesis 14 when Abram met the king of Sodom and the king of Salem. Let's get our Bibles out and turn to Genesis 14. We'll take a reading beginning in verse 17 in just a moment. After a midnight raid against a force far outnumbering his own, Abram defeated a handful of kings and rescued his nephew Lot from their possession. Following his triumph, he returned to Canaan and was met by two unlikely men in the Valley of the Kings. One of these men was the king of Sodom, and the other was the king of Salem, later to be called Jerusalem. Abram's response to each of these men provides a strong indication of his trust in the Lord. So we want to present an analysis of Abram's response to the king of Sodom and Melchizedek, the king of Salem. And we've taken our notes today from the Bible Knowledge Commentary. Abram receives the blessing by Melchizedek. Now we'll get our Bibles out, turn to Genesis 14. I'm going to read from the ESV today. After his return from the defeat of Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shaveh, that is, the king's valley. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was a priest of the God Most High. And he blessed him and said, "Blessed be Abram by the God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hands." And Abram gave him a tenth of everything. And the king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give me the persons, but take the goods for yourself." But Abram said to the king of Sodom, "I have lifted my hand to the Lord, God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, that I would not take a thread or a sandal strap or anything that is yours, lest you should say, 'I made Abram rich.' I will take nothing but what the young men have eaten, and the share of the men who went with me. Let Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre take their share." I went ahead and read down through verse 24. This is one of the most fascinating encounters that you can find in the Old Testament. Two kings met Abram on his return from the battle, and they could not possibly have been more different. In contrast with the wicked city of Sodom and its ruler Bera, who also was undoubtedly wicked, was the Melchizedek, the king of Salem. See Psalm 76:2 to see that Salem and Jerusalem are one and the same. Melchizedek was a priest of God Most High, as we read in Genesis 14:18. Melchizedek's name, which means king of righteousness, suggests a righteous ruler who was a representative of God. There are some Bible students out there that believe Melchizedek was an appearance of the pre-incarnate Christ. I'm not willing to take it that far, but indeed we understand that Melchizedek is a type of Christ, in that he was a prophet, a priest, and a king. Melchizedek is the only person whom Abraham recognized as his spiritual superior. Abram accepted a blessing from him and paid him a tenth of all he had. He did this deliberately in full awareness of what he was doing. It shows how unthreatened and humble Abram was even after a victory. He recognized that God's revelation was not limited to him. While the reader's attention is focused on Abram carrying the whole spiritual hope of the world, there emerged out of an obscure Canaanite valley a man nearer to God than Abraham was. a man who was able to bless Abram. And I apologize for going back and forth between calling Abram Abraham at this moment. He had not been given that name yet. I'll try to do better as we move through this study. Abram, A-B-R-A-M. The valley was the valley of Shabbath, possibly the Kidron Valley near Jerusalem. See 2 Samuel 18:18. These verses are arranged in a chiastic arrangement, A-B-B-A. An example of that in English or American English vernacular is, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. You'll notice that going starts and ends the sentence, while the word tough is in the middle of the sentence. So as we take a look at these verses, starting in verse 17, we see the king of Sodom met Abram. The king of Salem met Abram. The king of Salem blessed Abram. And the king of Sodom offered Abram a deal. This chiastic type sentence is found quite a few places in the Bible. Jesus himself said, "The last shall be first and the first shall be last." Or perhaps he said, "The first shall be last and the last shall be first." It just slipped my mind. I apologize. You can correct me down in the comments. The fact that the offer from the king of Sodom came after Melchizedek's blessing probably helped Abram keep things in a close perspective. Let's read verses 22 through 24 again. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, "I have lifted my hand to the Lord, the God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, that I would not take a thread or a sandal strap or anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich. I will take nothing but what the young men have eaten, and the share of the men who went with me. Let Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre take their share." Abram swore before the Lord God Most High, the creator of heaven and earth, that he would take nothing that belonged to Sodom, lest Bera, the king of Sodom, take credit for making Abram rich. This incident was a test of Abram's faith after a great victory. Sodom's king, known as Bera, offered a most appealing deal, but Abram, knowing what he did about the king of Sodom, felt that keeping Sodom's loot, which he captured, would make him subject to Bera. He wanted something far more enduring than possessions and wealth. He wanted the fulfillment of God's miraculous and enduring promises. Faith looks beyond the riches of this world to the grander prospects that God has in store. Abram knew he would become more prosperous and understood who was blessing him. He intended to receive everything from God, but not even a thread from Sodom. Obedient believers frame their lives so that they depend on God for all success, joy, comfort, and prosperity. But their faith is like Abram's, deeply rooted and growing more robust rather than brief and weak. The king of Sodom was a wicked man reigning over an evil empire. Abram discerned that dealing with him might be dangerous. Abram could have reason that God sought to bless him through this offer, but he could not bring himself to equate the blessing of God with the best that Sodom had to give. Let's talk about the priest king, Melchizedek. Melchizedek is a significant figure in the Bible. Preceding Abram, we know he was not a Levitical priest. Levi was yet to be born. When David prophesied that his great descendant, the Messiah, would be a priest forever, He said he would be a priest after the order of Melchizedek, Psalm 110, verse 4. David looked beyond the Levitical priesthood, which would be done away with at the coming of the Messiah. The book of Hebrews demonstrates how Jesus Christ fulfilled the Levitical order and began a better high priesthood through his death. In referring to Melchizedek as the perfect type of Christ, the writer of Hebrews capitalized on Melchizedek's anonymity. In a book such as Genesis, filled with genealogies and ancestral notation, this man appeared without family records, Hebrews 7:3. Melchizedek is remembered as a high priest. Because Abram paid tithes to Melchizedek, the order of Melchizedek is then superior to Levi, who was the descendant of Abram. We'll close our study by taking the reading from Hebrews 7, verse 3 through 10. We'll begin in verse 4. See how great this man was, to whom Abraham the patriarch gave a tenth of the spoils. Of course, the Hebrew writer is referring to Melchizedek. And those descendants of Levi who received the priestly office have a commandment in the law to take tithes from the people, that is, from their brothers, though these also are descended from Abraham. But this man, who does not have his descent from them, received tithes from Abraham and blessed him who had the promises. It is beyond dispute that the inferior is blessed by the superior. In the one case, tithes are received by mortal men, but in the other case, by one of whom it is testified that he lives. One might even say that Levi himself, who received tithes, paid tithes through Abraham, for he was still in the loins of his ancestor when Melchizedek met him. Thanks to the folks over at Bible Knowledge Commentary for providing us with these interesting ideas concerning both the king of Sodom and the king of Salem, their meeting with Abram, and how this Melchizedek is a type of Christ, a prophet, a priest, and a king. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. We would really love to have you as a member of the channel. Also, today we took a painting of Abram meeting Melchizedek and receiving bread from him, and this was by the famous painter Peter Paul Rubens. Can you come back and study with me again soon? I wish you would. I would certainly appreciate it as we take our Bibles, open them up, and consider Bible class topics. Until we meet again, may God bless.